Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and this new LEGO Ninjago set is the worst. And you want to know why? Well, because from now on, I can never get another new LEGO mech set and not think back to this one and go, I feel like this one was better. Because you see, this mech set sets a new precedent for what we would want to see out of LEGO mechs in general. And as you can probably tell, this is, in my opinion, the best LEGO mech they have ever made. And LEGO has made a ton of mechs, so I do not put that lightly. Even just for Ninjago, as you can see here, we've gotten so many different mechs over the years with all sorts of different designs, different points of articulation, different detailing, and LEGO just seems to keep on improving on their mech designs year after year. But I have yet to see a mech that balances both form and function, posability, articulation, and stability, and size, as well as this mech right here. So what is this set? This is coming out on June 1st, 2024, depending on what region you live in, and this is Cole's Titan Dragon Mech. It is a continuation of the Titan Mech series started in 2019 with Lloyd's Titan Mech. We've gotten a J1, we've gotten a lot of different Titan mechs for all the different ninja, but this is easily the best one. Because not only does this set have working knees with sliding armor panels to actually facilitate the movement of the knees on triple ball joints for the knees, but for the first time ever, it also has a fully articulatable double bionicle piston style ankle joint here, where this allows for a crazy range of articulation, unlike really anything we've seen from any other LEGO Ninjago mech. And not only that, you can move the legs back and forth, splay them side to side. You can rotate the legs like this, so that's another point of articulation. The set has waist articulation as well, so you can rotate the entire thing on the waist, and it has triple articulation for the way the elbows work, with double sets of ratchet joints and click joints being used to move around the elbows. The arms are mounted on ball joints for the hands. Even the shoulders themselves are mounted on up and down and rotational ratchet joints. This is honestly a dream come true, and yeah, you can even rotate the arms outwards like this. When I first heard rumors of there being one of Ninjago's greatest mech sets ever coming out this summer, admittedly I was a little skeptical because honestly other LEGO themes like Monkey Kid have really been killing it in the mech department, and while Ninjago always gives us good mechs, I wasn't really sure if they could really find a way to suitably innovate on the actual design style for mechs. Until this. Because for the first time it's fully posable, ankles, knees, rotational joints. I am so happy with this build, and yeah, it's the worst because I am terrified that LEGO will never be able to live up to the potential this mech offers, and every time we get a large mech, I will be asking, why didn't it do this to give it more posability? But hey, we'll have to see. This may set a new precedent for what we would expect to see out of LEGO mechs, and to that I say, bring it on. But now, without further ado, let's jump into our review of the brand new Cole's Titan Dragon Mech. Before we jump into this review, I actually want to put out a really quick clarification and resetting of expectations. Thankfully, Tooth Dominoes, aka Neek, the designer of this set, was actually able to give a comment on some of the reviews that have already come out, so I wanted to put this out there before I dive into this particular review, because basically what he has said is that this is not the new standard for Ninjago mechs. It's a specific product with a very different age target. So basically for future Ninjago mechs, expect them to prioritize play and essentially probably have not quite as high levels of articulation or detail or functionality as this mech, because they are intended for younger kids. This was kind of a special one-off thing where they made a mech for the 12+ age range, allowing them to do something for older fans, and it's not a guarantee that future LEGO mechs are going to be like this. So again, a lot of this video, as you're about to find out, is me saying that now LEGO has set a new bar and a new standard for how mechs should be. And to be completely honest, that's not super accurate anymore, because the designer has explicitly stated this is not meant to set a new expectation. This is instead meant to be a special one-off product where they could go a little bit more crazy with the detail and articulation and posability because it was aimed for older audiences. So it is what it is, and definitely I still do think that this does show what LEGO could do with a large mech for older audiences, and I really do hope that for future Titan mechs, if we ever get a Kai's Titan mech or something like that, maybe they could also do it for older audiences and do something like this. But this is just a disclaimer that no, this is not going to be the expectation for all future mechs, no matter how much I personally would like it to be. I totally understand LEGO has a lot of guidelines to make mechs and stuff like this easier for kids to put together and play with, and as you're about to find out in the review, this is definitely not the kind of set made for the youngest of kids. So with that, let's jump right in. So this is Cole's Titan Dragon Mech. It will release on June 1st almost everywhere in the world except for North America, where it will release on August 1st. It comes with one minifigure, Mech Pilot Cole, and will retail for $100 or 100 euros. And is, in my opinion, the greatest LEGO mech, and arguably one of, if not the greatest, buildable characters that LEGO has ever made. And that includes Bionicle, and that is high praise coming from me. So why is this set so special? Well, LEGO, and specifically the designer Neek, aka Tooth Dominoes, have pulled off what I initially thought was kind of going to be impossible in today's modern day and age. And that is to make a fully posable, articulatable mech set that is fully detailed, large, has a very cohesive aesthetic and color scheme, but also is fully playable. Now, just to give some background history on LEGO mechs, we first started really seeing a ton of LEGO mechs with LEGO Exoforce back in 2006 to 2008. Now, one of the biggest complaints that kids had about Exoforce was that one, the models were basically meant to look as large as possible with as few pieces as possible, meaning that they were pretty flimsy. Pieces would fall off here and there, different little fiddly bits would keep coming off the mechs, and they just weren't the most stable of constructions. The bigger and more important point, though, was that because of the amount of articulation that we got in the ratchet joints used on LEGO Exoforce, kids had a really difficult time making them stand up. Nowadays, if a younger kid wants to play with a LEGO mech, they basically have to be able to pick it up by the waist, swing it around and play with it, and just plunk it down on a table and it should be good to go. Something that is really difficult to do the more articulation points there are. Because of this direct customer feedback from LEGO Exoforce, LEGO instituted some standards and practices across any sort of constructible action figure build throughout the entire LEGO portfolio, where the bigger they are, the more constrained in articulation they have to be in order to pass LEGO's very rigorous quality and standards testing. Now, because of that, that has led to a pretty infamous problem in modern LEGO mechs, which is a lack of knees. And because of that, most LEGO mechs have ankles that you can maybe swing back and forth a little bit, no knees whatsoever, completely fixed knees, and then just legs that you can bend back and forth, meaning that you can't really get them in any sort of interesting pose. You can really just swing the legs backwards and forwards without a lot of articulation and room to play in between. And even when LEGO does give us knees, because we did actually get some knees in some modern LEGO sets, I feel like a lot of people miss the point in that knees are not the problem in a lack of articulation. They're part of the problem, but if you want a fully articulated action figure, you need both posable knees and incredibly posable ankles. And because of that, because LEGO has been trying to keep things as stable as possible and they just don't have the joint pieces available to make things have more articulation while still remaining stable, the bigger things get, every mech they make that does include knees, such as Zane's Titan mech, which was the previous best LEGO mech in my opinion, or even the Samurai X mech from Ninjago Crystallized, all of the mechs that have knees are able to bend those knees, but they just aren't able to bend their ankles, meaning that the knees are kinda useless when it comes to posability. Sure, it's a step up from no knees and no ankles at all, but if you have knees but you can't actually move the feet, well, why even have knees if you can't actually put it in a walking pose? Because then that means that it's forever going to be constrained by whatever pose the ankles are originally in. And for a long time, we thought that it was going to be it. Either a set was going to have no knees and no ankles, which was kind of the norm. We might get lucky and get knees, but that would mean there would be no ankles. Or we might get very lucky, and this year, get articulated ankles, which is what we got in Kai's Climber Mech. Now that was a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one, because they brought back the usage of the Bionicle 2006 Titan piston articulation piece, which they previously used to give stable ankle articulation to large-scale Bionicle Titan figures, but they hadn't actually used that piece for LEGO Mech until then. And that set did not have knees, but it did have ankles, and the designers actually stated that because of the fact that it had so many articulation points, they had to remove the knees and not give it knees so that kids would be able to play with it easier. So there always was a bit of a trade-off. Either it had great ankles but no knees, great knees but no ankles, and more often than not, neither. Until now. Because as you can guess where we're going with this model not only has articulated knees with sliding armor joints on those knees, but it also has articulated ankles which are fully posable with friction thanks to not one but two copies of the Bionicle piston add-on piece that allows you to add in articulation, but it also has twisting lateral movement for the legs, so you can actually rotate and splay the legs outwards, and the legs themselves are mounted on a ratchet joint which allows you to bend them forwards, backwards, up, and down. This is like more articulation than a human being. The amount of stuff that you can do with this mech is kinda mind-blowing. And personally, I'm just really shocked that LEGO actually decided that this was good enough to go and stable enough to be a product that obviously is geared towards a slightly older audience. That's very fair. But is still primarily a kid's toy in the Ninjago line. Oh, and that's not all. No, it's not just the legs. The waist itself can fully articulate all the way around 360-degree waist movement for the model itself, and the arms also can move up and down, forwards and backwards. They have lateral arm movement, bending outwards to splay the arms outwards or to have the arms in a cross position, and they have double click joints for the way the elbow moves, so you can move the elbow all the way back up. In fact, the elbow is currently held tighter than my own elbow can go right now in the mech itself. Of course, the hands are mounted on ball joints, so you get a great amount of articulation there, as per usual. The neck is mounted on clips, and then the head itself is mounted on a mixel or mini ball joint, so you get some more articulation there. And it even has detachable dragon wings, which actually do have the option to be completely removed from the mech if you just want to play with it as a standard mech, because while the wings are cool, they do sometimes get in the way of the gigantic shoulder pads, but it does have these detachable wings, which are also mounted on mixel joints, so you can bend them forwards and backwards, and each of the wingtip blades are mounted on individual click hinges, so you can even articulate the wings. This is unprecedented. This is a level of articulation, a level of playability that we've literally never seen from pretty much any LEGO action figure they've done. Even the most articulated Bionicle sets did not have double jointed elbows to allow you to really bend them all the way up. Most of them didn't have this lateral twist motion because obviously that was pretty much just mounted on a ball joint, so you didn't actually have that amount of articulation, and nothing this big. Especially from modern LEGO, right? Especially from sets that we've seen in the past 10 years, even more, 20 years, really. We haven't seen this degree of articulation ever in a LEGO mech. The only one that comes close to having this size and amount of articulation was the Titan XP, which is one of those legendary designer LEGO sets that was part of the Creator Extended line all the way back in, I believe, 2003, 2002, 2004, that era. Did I get it right? Something like that. But the Titan XP had a lot of problems because it was a product of its time, and that was before LEGO was really caring a lot about stability and joints for LEGO mechs. So that is the kind of thing that if you pick it up, it is going to break, it's not going to hold a pose, it's going to topple over, fall backwards, fall forwards, and it's a good example of why LEGO didn't do that for modern mechs. But this changes the game. And as I said in the title and beginning of this video, this set is the worst because now LEGO cannot put out a mech without me comparing it to this. This is not hyperbole. Like, I will roast a set if I need to. I'll roast the price of a set. I'll roast the design if I really need to, and longtime followers of Duckbricks know when I'm being honest about a set and say this isn't good, or they really should fix this here. But no, I'm not joking. This set is actively kind of has a negative effect on me for future LEGO mechs, because I'm terrified now that if we go back to the way things were and we get another LEGO mech from Ninjago or a similar theme, I'm always going to ask, well, why couldn't it be like this? Now, there are a lot of special circumstances surrounding the creation of this model. This is designer Neek, aka Tooth Domino's last official model as a LEGO set designer. He has since changed positions to become kind of a creative overseer of all of Ninjago, which means that there will be designers under him who will be creating builds, and he'll be tweaking them and maybe designing the odd build here and there, but he's not going to be full-time making models anymore. And so he kind of wanted to make his last set a magnum opus, to go out with a bang. And that's kind of what worries me as well, because this isn't necessarily a sign of LEGO deciding to change the way they make mechs to make them like this, to make them more playable, to make them more posable, to make them more articulatable. This is just Neek cooking. Like, this is one guy just absolutely popping off and making the best LEGO mech we're gonna see for maybe years. And what I would love to be proven wrong. If LEGO releases the next Ninjago mech, and it's as good or better than this, I will eat my words. I will retitle this video. I will do it. But right now, I will be forced to compare every LEGO mech that comes out to this. And I feel like mechs that previously, if this did not exist, mechs that I would have been like, that's amazing, that's great, knees, awesome, no ankles, whatever, LEGO's never gonna do it anyway, this is as good as it gets. And get used to accepting what LEGO puts out and being very happy with that. And that's not to put down the work of other designers. Everybody works incredibly hard on any LEGO set that comes out, but it is just to say that the standards have been raised. The bar was here. The bar is now in space. We've left the atmosphere. The bar's not here. The bar's not here. It's up to the ceiling. It's past the ceiling. This just set a brand new standard for what I kind of will expect from LEGO, from mechs moving forwards, for better or for worse. And I do have to say, I have received at least one other mech set releasing at the same time as this, and any other day, I'm not going to call out which one it is, but any other day I would have been like, this is so cool, this is great, good standard LEGO mech, and now I'm like, this is nothing compared to this. It's just like the articulation is lacking, you can't move the ankles at all, there are knees but you can't move the ankles, what's going on? It's just like, it's not a comparison anymore. And now like, this has colored my view of mechs. This set is so good, it has turned me against every other LEGO mech, and has now made me want to go out and modify all my other existing LEGO mechs to feature the same articulation this does. But enough about the articulation. Right, I've spoken at length about all the things that this mech can do, the crazy poses you can get it in, the amazing sliding panels, by the way, that they do the knees in sliding panels. That is so cool, and I don't think we've ever seen that on a mech before. And that's only something that really high-end mech builders and fans and Gundam folks and special like Hot Toys collectible Iron Man Hulkbuster people, those are the kinds of things that you'd come to expect from products like that, right? Not from a LEGO set. Not from a LEGO set aimed for younger audiences for Ninjago. And this is aimed at older fans of the show. But it's still a Ninjago set. You know, it's not an 18 plus set, it's not an icon set. This is meant to be played with, and oh boy, can you play with this set. But again, as I was saying, I feel like I've talked enough about the posability. It is absolutely mind-blowing. I spent literally hours after building this just arranging the mech in all sorts of different poses. It exceeded my wildest dreams. I got it crouched down on one knee. I got it balancing and doing a kick. I got it doing a sort of like walking pose with one foot completely off the ground. I had it punching. I had it going like this, fists up. I got this in so many wacky and wild poses, and it was just so much fun to play with this. I feel like as a set collector, I don't have a lot of time to simply sit down and play with LEGO sets anymore, which is why I'm so grateful that this set brought out my inner kid. And when I finished it, I didn't come down here and do the review, I didn't start trying to take photos of it, I didn't start prepping it for my next video, and I didn't just pin it up on the wall. I sat down on the floor, picked it up, and played with it. And this is probably silly that it's kind of a novel concept for me. I mean, I'm surrounded by toys, right? Like, Lego is a toy at its core. But I feel like it is easy to get wrapped up in the hobby, in the collecting, in the displayability of things that you sometimes can forget to just play with what you have. And this just kind of unlocked my inner child, and I'm very grateful to everybody involved in the design process for doing that. It is hard to hide my bias here. I grew up playing with Lego Exoforce and Mechs and Bionicle and playing with buildable action figures from Lego. That's my thing. I love this stuff. And so to get something like this is honestly beyond my wildest dreams. But moving beyond articulation, I do want to talk about the aesthetics, because that is another very important part of a mech, especially a mech this size. How do people feel about the aesthetics? And now when this set actually dropped online, there's actually, as far as I could tell, a fair bit of controversy or at least discussion about the color scheme and the overall look and feel of the mech itself. And we'll be getting to some of the more controversial elements, like the choice to include only one minifigure later in the review when we talk about price. But I want to talk about the color scheme and aesthetics first. And this is a really interesting one, because what makes a Titan mech? Well, for me, it's got to have Titan in the name, Lloyd's Titan mech, Jay's Titan mech, Zane's Titan mech, and now Cole's Titan Dragon mech, meaning we're only missing one for Kai, actually, which is surprising, because Kai usually is the first to get something like this, and Nia, which is less surprising, because Lego rarely makes gigantic Nia sets. And despite the fact that we did just get a giant Samurai X mech, I don't think it counts as a Titan mech because it doesn't have Titan in the name, but it's also missing one of the most important features of all of the Titan mechs, something they've deliberately kept consistent throughout literally every single one we've gotten, and that is somehow having white pieces integrated into the color scheme in a pretty major manner. This started with Lloyd's mech from Season 11, Secrets of the Forbidden Spinjitzu, which is maybe intentional because that one was kind of set in the snow. I don't know if that's why that mech was predominantly white and sand green versus being like an all green mech, but for whatever reason, that kind of set what a Titan mech was supposed to look like. Then we got Zane's Titan mech, which was albeit a legacy remake of an older Ninjago possession set, but it's still, obviously, since it's Zane, had white integrated into the color scheme and did introduce a lot of new things. If you watched my top 10 best Lego mechs video, you may have seen that number 1 on the list. Well, sorry folks, it's number 2 now because of this. But it had white integrated in the color scheme, and then Jay's Titan mech, which we just got for Ninjago Core last year, also had a very heavy focus on white elements being integrated into the color scheme itself. But the trickiest one to do was always going to be Cole's, because obviously Cole is a very darker shaded, coded character. He has the blacks, the oranges, the dark grays, very rarely light grays, but mostly, as the Ninja of Earth, he is using this muted and more kind of darker color scheme that we would see throughout all of his vehicles and weapons and mechs in the past. And the challenge would be, well, how do you actually integrate white into the color scheme itself? And Neek, aka Tooth Dominoes, actually did a really great thread on designing the set where he mentioned that the entire point was to make it look like this mech was built completely out of stone, but that stone was then wearing white armor. And when he said that, everything just kind of clicked in my mind. Because if you really look at it, all of the white components are constrained to just the lower arms, the hands, the lower legs, and some of the leg armor. But then, if you look at some of the parts that are kind of on the upper legs and the upper arms, you do have this very dark gray and stone-like pieces, literally. The rock pieces that were introduced for stuff like power miners being utilized here as stone. And that's when everything starts to come together, where this is predominantly a mech that is made purely out of stone. Maybe, again, Season 2 of Dragons Rising Part 2 has not aired yet, so I do not know what this is going to look like in show, but it could even be Cole's rock form wearing armor. We do not know. And I feel like that could totally work, because this is really something that feels like it is wearing armor. There feels like there's layers of armor here, and the color scheme gets it across in a really cool way, where the entire mech feels like it is almost wearing a suit itself. And I think that's a really cool design feature and a very smart way to integrate white into the color scheme and make it not clash. And I feel like it would have been very easy to include random white highlights here and there on the center body and to kind of scatter it all around and then include maybe a little bit more black and gray into the side of the lower arms and lower legs. But everything about the design choices of the model are incredibly intentional. Each piece has been put on by actually adding to the color scheme and making it feel like this is a very, very intentionally designed model when it comes to the color scheme itself. And that's something that I really do appreciate, just how smoothly everything comes together. I will say, it's not everyone's cup of tea. White, dark gray, orange, black, gold, and light gray are a lot of colors. And somebody who is not an expert at trying to make a color scheme cohesive, at trying to make something make sense, could easily have turned this into a total mess. And I hate to say it, but we have seen LEGO sets that have forcibly included random colors as part of team-up vehicles or to maintain a consistency across a wave for the worse. And I think the bigger example of that is for Nexo Knights, where by the final year, you had dark blue, light gray, as well as the hero's main colors, whether it be flame yellowish orange, or lime green, or orange, or blue, as well as gold and transparent orange, and they did not handle that well for many of the sets. I gotta say, a lot of them feel pretty rough to me in terms of the way the color blocking is done. But not this. This feels like they spent a lot of time trying to figure out, what is this going to look like? What is it going to feel like? How are the colors going to come across on this model to make everything feel intentional? And I really, really like that. The piece usage is also phenomenal. We got a gold recolor of the Dune Ornithopter wing being used as a sword here. Ever since I saw that piece introduced earlier this year for the Ornithopter in February, I was thinking, that would be the coolest piece to be used as a sword. It is cool it comes in dark gray, but I wish it came in like gold or silver. And well, mere months later, here I am with the golden recolored blade being used as a sword, which is super smart and just looks so good as a Ninjago themed sword and absolutely massive. I think this is the biggest sword they've ever done for a Ninjago mech. And they also are using a lot of the other newer pieces. We got the Moon Knight Scepter element weapon pieces being used for the crown of the mech itself, which I always thought would make a really good crest for Samurai X. We have the Uruk-hai swords in gold for the back contrails. Again, those rock pieces being used to evoke the rock. All of the armor pieces used are incredibly angular and sharp and pointy and making it feel like a very almost Gundam-inspired or Neon Genesis Evangelion-inspired style of mech. It looks and feels very anime, and in the best way possible. This is just so cool, and again, I think it's the best mech that LEGO's done. However, this is a review, and there are actually some negative points that I do want to mention. Not everything about it is perfect, and I do want to call out a couple of things that I do feel maybe can be improved the next time they do decide to do something like this, and this is no knock against the design. Again, I've spent however many minutes this is in absolutely gushing about the mech, but it is only fair to talk about some of the places where I do feel like maybe some improvements could be made. And I don't even know what those improvements would be, because I've thought about it and I can't really think of a better way to do some of these things. But when you're playing around the mech, and to be honest, I was playing around with it pretty harshly. Like, I was pretty rough with it. I was bending things around, I was twisting things, I was moving the legs back and forth over and over again just to see the knee joints move, because that's so cool to me. But in doing so, I did notice a couple of weak points that I am somewhat surprised did get by LEGO quality testing in terms of being played with kids, because there are a couple of things that just the more that you move the knees, and over the lifetime of the set, the more that you move things around, the more that you move some of the arms, certain pieces will fall off. If you are bending the knees back and forth, this can cause the upper leg, which does have this rotational joint motion, to kind of bend back and forth in the joint, which causes this specialized gray slope piece to pop off of the upper leg. And I've tried to mitigate that in some ways, but there isn't really an easy way to prevent that. You just have to kind of grab it when it pops off. The same thing happens with the gold ingots on the knee elements here, because these are just individual clip elements. Once you bend the legs back and forth, because there's just very slight variations in them twisting and turning, these do tend to pop off sometimes, but it does take a lot of bends for it to do that. One of the bigger things is that when you're plonking this down and trying to get it to assume some crazy poses, the feet sometimes, due to the insane amount of friction in the ankles, there's almost too much friction to the point where sometimes the side light gray rock elements on the front of the feet will just pop off. If you place the foot at an angle, they will just pop off and you just have to kind of stick them back on. It's not a big deal, but if you're just trying to push the mech down to make it articulate, you're better off lifting it up, adjusting the ankle ever so slightly to be tilted in the way you want, and then putting it down to make sure it's more stable. One of the other things that was really surprising to me that kept falling off were on both arms. When you bend the elbows, there is a concave, an inverted slope element, 2x2 slope, being used on the underside of the middle elbow joint. And because, again, there is some variation in the way you twist the joints and not everything is held together as tightly as it should be, that will just keep falling off. And the more you move it, that is probably the one part on the mech that just keeps on falling off. I can think of a couple ways they might have been able to make it better, and that was probably putting a plate on the top of the arms, but then that would have limited articulation because then you wouldn't be able to move the lower elbow up so far. And then maybe I was thinking, okay, well, what if they did a piece at the back behind there that was just a 2x2 plate and then you stick the slope underneath it? Well, then you couldn't hold the arm completely straight because the pieces are perfectly flush when you do have the arm out straight. So I genuinely don't think there is a better way to do that. And I do think it is just kind of a quirk of the model. Just get used to putting that slope piece on over and over again because it just does come off when you move it around. It is not a big deal. And compared to a lot of older LEGO mechs when things were falling off left and right, this is a crazy improvement, but just something I do want to point out after having actually sat down and played with it for a ton. And the other thing is that because the shoulder armor is so angular and goes up so high, it does tend to conflict with the wings in the back, where if you want to pose it in a crazy pose by lifting up the arm with the sword and the wings on, one of the wings is just going to have to bend basically all the way back. However, I do feel like that was a pretty fair trade-off because the wings look cool, but also the upper shoulder armor looks very cool. So what can you do? You know, like there are definitely compromises made, and there are things that are not quite perfect for aesthetic reasons that they decided to do because it would look better or have more articulation, and they did sacrifice some stability points there, which I feel like with every model, and I would assume, especially when you're a designer, everything like this is a trade-off. And LEGO models go through so much testing from one version of the prototype to another that I'm sure that this was tested and the decision was just made to kind of let people who build it live with it, because having to change the way it's done would dramatically impact the articulation or the look. So I do understand that, but just things I do want to call out. It is a little bit difficult actually getting the minifigure inside the cockpit because it is so enclosed. However, that's not a big deal for me because I totally don't mind that at all. It makes the pilot feel a lot more protected inside the mech itself. And then sometimes, on very rare occasions, whatever angle you have it in, the sword's gonna droop. Like, it is a gigantic sword, and if you have your arms at just the right position, if you want to have it like at a striking position, that ball joint is not holding up. Also, the inverted slope piece literally just fell off, and I just bent the arm very gently here. So yeah, that's what I'm talking about. But otherwise, really, really phenomenal set. And now I think it's time to talk about the price, because this set retails for $100 US, has over 1,100 pieces. So price to part ratio is great, but it only comes with one minifigure. And I've seen people online complaining at length about why, oh why did this only include one minifigure, and it's crazy that we're paying $100 for a set and only getting one minifigure with it. Well, to that I say, Star Wars fans regularly pay $700, $800, $900 for a set and get maybe a minifigure or two if they're lucky. And obviously those are display sets, those are UCS sets, but for a set like this, it almost feels to me like kind of a flex that the designers were saying, look, you're not buying this for the minifigures. You're not buying this for any other reason other than this is the best mech that we as a company have ever produced. So if you don't like it, then you're not getting it for the right reason, which is to have this mech that you can play with. Personally, I've always subscribed to the kind of line of thought that Jangbricks and some other LEGO reviewers subscribe to, which some other people don't. Other people vehemently disagree. But I'm always of the opinion that minifigures for most sets are secondary. And if I'm spending $100 on a set, I am much more satisfied feeling that my $100 went towards a solid build that I can play with, that is really fun, that's posable, that's great for display, versus my $100 went to an okay build, but like 8 minifigures. You know? That's just always my line of thought. I always prioritize having good builds over minifigures, because minifigures, they're cool. I love minifigures, obviously. I'm a big minifigure collector, but they're not everything. And the more expensive that sets become, I feel like unless you're going for like a diorama set, like the recently revealed Age of Ultron diorama, which has all the Avengers and is basically a scenery set, I mean, that of course is focused on the minifigures, right? You're getting it for the figures and also to put them in a scene. But for a playable vehicle especially, I want my money to be going towards the vehicle. And if it had to be done this way, to make this set without compromises and only have one minifigure, it's not that big of a deal. Do I wish this included maybe 1 or 2 of the wolf warriors with the giant claws on the back to act as just some sort of semblance of enemies? Yeah, that would have been great. But as Tooth Dominoes, aka Neek, explained on Twitter, this actually was a conscious choice, where if they included more minifigures in the set, they would have had to remove points of articulation because joints are some of the most expensive pieces in LEGO sets. They would have had to remove detail from the mech. They would have had to cut back on the amount of things that you could do with it, and he wasn't willing to compromise on the model just to include a few more figures. And I respect that. You know, I can get behind that. And that is just my opinion. Not everybody watching this video will agree. I'm sure many folks in the comments will be like, Duckbricks, you are crazy. This is such a ripoff. What a shill. And to that I say, I swear to you, I am not just saying that because of the set. I mean, if a set is overpriced for no reason, I will rip into it. Check out my X-Men Jet review, my X-Men 97 Jet review. Check out my review of the Hoopty. I will roast a set if it's too expensive, and I will not hold back. If there is a set that I feel should not cost what it costs, I will say it. Even if it's provided to me for free by LEGO. I don't care. LEGO does not dictate what I say. I am an independent reviewer, and I will review and say the things that I want to say. So believe me when I do say that I genuinely am not bothered by the inclusion of only one exclusive minifigure in the set, because the set is that good. Now, okay, if this mech was not this good, right? If this mech didn't have ankles, if it didn't have knees, if you couldn't articulate it that much, oh, you bet I would be complaining about a lack of minifigures for $100 and for it being like just an okay mech. Because we've gotten giant mechs before, like the Samurai X mech from Crystallized, which had a ton of exclusive minifigures. And that being said, that was a lot more expensive, but it's been done before. But because this mech is so good, because this literally blew my mind with what it can do, with the amount of stuff that they managed to pack into playability for the mech, having only one minifigure, no biggie. Especially because that minifigure is very, very cool. Let's actually take a closer look at this figure. This is Mech Cole, and obviously I did just put out a video that goes through every single minifigure of the wave in detail, so if you want to see more details on this figure and his compatriots, you can go ahead and check that out. But this is a really interesting suit. It is one of the most unique designs for Cole that we've ever gotten from Ninjago, featuring an all white and orange suit, which I think is a little bit of a departure from standard Ninjago stuff, and most collectors may feel like this goes a little bit too far in terms of depicting a ninja without using their primary color too much. But for me, this feels like an Exoforce suit. This feels like an anime suit. This feels like a classic mecha suit. And the only thing that kind of strikes me as a little strange about this is the hood. I honestly feel like if they changed the hood black coloration to white, which I've seen some people edit online, this figure would actually look a lot better. Now, that being said, that's a trade-off, right? Because that would distance it even further from Cole. That would kind of make it almost look like a Zane minifigure. But I don't know. I feel like this with a white hood would have actually worked out really nicely. White and orange, or maybe if you made the top part white and then the bands black. I don't know. There's something they could have done to change it around, but as it is, I do like it. I think it is a cool figure. It's a great usage of the orange color of the Praetorian Guard armor piece. Very, very happy this armor piece has finally appeared in a Ninjago minifigure outside of some of the core Serpentine. And overall, I think the design is really, really great. I love the mechanical detail. It feels like there's actually a reactor core inside of the suit itself, which is super cool. It's kind of like Cole's stand suit or something like that. And overall, I think it is the perfect suit to complement the mech. It is a non-traditional suit for a non-traditional mech. And that's pretty much all I have to say about the minifigure. And so with that, I think we have summed up my look at Cole's Titan Dragon Mech. $100 gets you easily the best mech LEGO's ever made. It also says that this is the biggest LEGO Ninjago mech so far, which I kind of find funny because the so far implies that they probably have like an even bigger one that's ready to release probably January of next year or maybe next summer, because they've been very intentional with like, this is the biggest and best one so far. So I'm sure they're cooking up even crazier stuff, or at least I can hope. And again, I titled this video, "This Set is the Worst," because, well, for one, listen, I'm not going to deny it. I want as many eyes and attention on this set as possible. I feel like people may write off this set because the color scheme might not be what they like, or because it only has one minifigure, and I want as many people to know that this set is so good. This set defies and shatters expectations in how good it is. So yes, I did try to get more people to see this video in particular because I love the set so much and I want more people to buy it, because then that sends a message to LEGO that people do want more stuff like this, that we're not afraid of having a little bit more articulation, especially when it's fully stable, and hopefully will encourage LEGO to have designers do more stuff like this. But I also titled it that because it is the truth. I will be comparing every LEGO mech LEGO ever releases in the future in perpetuity from now into infinity back to here. This is where things changed for LEGO mechs. We have been in a rut, in an era since 2011, 2012. Since Ninjago began, of mechs being incredibly limited in articulation, and the bigger you get, the least amount of articulation you have, the fewer points there are. And this has changed the game. I feel like this is genuinely kind of a historic moment for LEGO. Maybe I'm being over dramatic, but as somebody who has built every LEGO mech they've ever made, I've built literally every single one, is a huge fan of LEGO mechs. I love them. I love it when LEGO does mechs in general, and who collects mechs. This is a step up. It's a big step up. The mech itself can take steps. And it's gonna take a lot for LEGO to top this. And I feel like that's about all I have to say about this build. When it releases, I urge you to go support Neek, go support LEGO Ninjago, go support LEGO doing more stuff like this. Get this set. It's a good deal. For $100, you are getting the pinnacle of mech design when it comes to making a stable set. And I do not say that lightly. That's all for this review, and thanks for watching. Alright, and with that, we have summed up my thoughts on Cole's Titan Dragon Mech. For $100, a pretty good deal given what you get. Really, the only downside is only one minifigure, but let's be real, that's kind of a flex in and of itself, where LEGO is basically saying, look, we know you're buying this just for the mech, and the mech can stand on its own virtues, which is super, super cool. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this look at a brand new LEGO Ninjago Dragons Rising set coming out this summer, and stay tuned because I will be publishing individual reviews of all of these sets in the entire new Season 2 Part 2 wave coming out this summer, so let me know which ones you want to see reviewed next, and definitely go check out the Mega review, which actually has already been posted, which showcases a quick look at all of the sets together. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon, and bye for now.